And that's where we want to play, not only for new, but also for existing, and how we can help them to, you know, transition to, an ultimate operation that allows that principal to put more in their pocket, to pay their producers more, to pay their CSR and their account execs more, while enriching their whole experience, leveraging, a digital footprint.
Welcome to Insurance Shoptalk. This is the podcast where the world of commercial insurance gets a little closer to home. I'm your host, Eric Stein, and in every episode, we're taking a deep dive into the insurance industry, from the latest news and trends to in-depth interviews with insurtech experts, carriers, and agency newsmakers. We're covering it all. So sit back, tune in, and let's start the conversation. All right, today I've got Travis MacMillian with Xceedance on in sunny Miami Beach, where it's 28, 30 degrees right now. Is that right, Travis?
That's right. Yeah, I actually had to get out my winter jacket just to go outside. It's terrible, and I've got iguanas dropping off, palm trees, practically running me over. Yeah,
Absolutely. It's one of my favorite places, though. As I mentioned, my daughter went to UM, so we got to go down a lot, and I would go to South Beach at least once or twice a year for the winter, to get some warmth. But hey, I appreciate you coming on, Travis. I'm excited to have you and learn more about what you guys do for property and casualty insurance agents, MGAs, to help automate and improve operations. Well, I know everyone's throwing around AI quite a bit, but you've actually got the whole package here, built and ready and working from your background. But why don't you start with kind of giving us a little bit about your background and hit the Xceedance and what you guys do.
yeah, sure, Eric. Happy to do that. So, look, I've been in the property casualty business my whole life, right? I started in the '80s on the carrier side of the business, which is always interesting because the companies I worked for, Commercial Union, CGU, One Beacon, GNY, always supporting the independent agent and broker community, right? And there's always different paths to go down, but so I have deep knowledge around them, what drives them, things like that. And then when I jumped over to the vendor side of the business, I had a couple of stops before I got to Xceedance. But this is an area that we're heightenedly focused on. Not only MGAs and MGUs, which we've been working with for a long time, but through a recent acquisition last year of a company called Marble Box, we've now gotten into the agent broker space in a big way. And where they worked on, things like policy checking and downloading of, policies on behalf of things like that, all of the, what I'll call back office operations, they did it through a non-tradition or a non-technology way. And so Xceedance being driven by technology, AI, agentic AI, things like that. Now we've brought in that entire flavor across, the operations to really, what I'll call jointly share with our agent partners so that they can be operating through the lens of growth, right? So how can I grow and maintain my current staff without having to add people, to the extent of, 5X, 10X kind of thing when they're in that, type of camp.
No, it makes total sense. And so, like, dive into, let's say you're a and casualty insurance agent, some of the services that you can offer them to sort of streamline their back office.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that, you always want to think about is, for example, quote preparation. If you think about most agents have multiple carriers they're working with, right? And if
Right.
you're doing personal lines or you're doing, where you may have a comparative rater, that's great. That gives some efficiency. But if you're in small or mid commercial, the carriers want you to be operating on their systems. So you got 5 carriers, you want to go out and find the best market. So you've got your CSR, your account exec, that's literally going from system to system, putting in the same information and repeating those tasks. That's not value add. It's value add on what you get back, and then you can look at the quotes and determine what's the best offer to go forward for your policyholder. But to get to that point, it takes a lot of work. And to be honest with you, we can take all of that away from them and most of it's, in an automated way. And if it's not, we have ways, to operate with, people until the point that it is automated, right? Because some carriers allow us to, to go in with an AI, an API connection, and then we can get things done real time, from an agency management system direct in. And other times, we have to do things a little bit differently using bots that may lift information and then push it into their systems and things like that. But you always want to have human in the loop to be able to check some of this stuff, right? So it's never going to be, people talk about this, AI is going to eliminate humans. That's I don't share that view. I think there's always going to be human in the loop. If you think about it, AI started from somewhere, right? Somebody had, I guess, a forward thinking enough brain to say, hey, look, here's how I can create this and get it to do that. And it's gotten smarter and smarter. I mean, look, AI has been around for a long time, probably 10, 15 years, but it was very elementary, right? Just with the latest developments around, Chat GPT, when 4 came out and then 5, it went from elementary to high school to college to, master's and now doctorate. And there's been advancements in all of that. But AI alone doesn't necessarily always solve all the problems. I think it's a combination of technologies that you have to bring together depending upon what the use case is, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. I do hear a lot of agents complaining, and even in our shop at Insurance Solutions, having to go to so many different portals. You really need to know the market really well before you start entering the data, so you don't waste your time or the CSR's time. So you're saying just by your service, and you're connected into a lot of the AMS systems you mentioned, right? Already?
Yeah. So look, yeah, if you think about it, right, I think 85% of the agent population in the US uses a version of Applied or AMS. Then there's others that, have gone down the path of, let's say utilization of Salesforce, or they've, built their own, if they're a technology shop. I think the question becomes, really, how can you leverage that? Because agents, as you know, live and breathe within their agency management system. That is their CRM that contains all of their policy information. The thing that happens is that, what you have to do is be able to push and pull data in and out of that, right? So we've created, a framework that allows for that to happen so that information can go back and forth to the carrier. If you also think about it, this has been an age-old problem for agents when they use upload and download, is that depending upon how their information is set, they upload the information, carrier issues the policy, and then they take the download, and it literally overwrites what they have within their agency management system a lot of times, and there's a gap, right? So I know many agents that have, like a SharePoint drive where they're keeping their data, and then they use, Applied or AMS, as that conduit to go back and forth with, their company partners, so that way, if they have to remarket an account as an example, they need all of that historical information that may have gotten wiped, that now they can kind of glue together to push forward. And when you think about that in a process standpoint, it becomes, very difficult for a CSR or an account exec to go in and try to create all these little pieces, put them together, and then take that forward out to the market when you have to like remarket a piece of business, right? So another service that we offer through a combination of technologies, including AI and agentic AI, would be, being able to grab information from all of those pieces, putting it together, and then being able to offer it back to, a carrier so that they can quote on that risk. Or we can automatically put it into, their system and get back the quote.
It's like a bot would enter it. So you're like a bridge between the AMS and the portal in a way.
Yeah, I mean, think about it as fundamentally, if you have a foundation, right? And on the foundation, you want to be able to have components that drive certain processes, right? And so that's what we've done and what we're looking to continue to enhance. And it doesn't mean that Xceedance always builds the components. We may partner with somebody, we may license something, and then we plug it into the platform to be able to drive the outcome that our agent partner needs.
Got it. And you're tied into the AMS, Vertipore, Apply, those guys, right?
Gotta be every day, every day.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then I see you've got on the website and so on, like COI management, policy checking, document management. Talk through that a little bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's talk about policy checking, right? I think there's two aspects of policy checking. One is what I call policy compare, which is I'm going to look at effective dates. I'm going to look at deductibles, limits, all of that, which is very easy to do. In fact, you could write a prompt to compare a policy to a binder, a policy to a quote, just comparing those elements, right? It's pretty simple to do that. When you get into true policy checking, like if I'm sitting there as an agent, right, what I want to know is when that policy comes in, if I had certain terms and conditions that were supposed to be there, are they there? Did they apply an exclusion that I'm not aware of, right? Because at the end of the day, where the rubber meets the road is when your insured or your policyholder has a claim. And if you didn't disclose to them there was an exclusion there, then guess what, Mr. and Mrs. Agent, you're probably on the hook, right, under your E&O, because you didn't do what you needed to do to disclose that. What policy checking can really do, is look at what we'll call unstructured data. So in this case, reading through a form and identifying where there's differences, and then the human in the loop looks at those highlighted areas to say, yes, this changes something, or no, it doesn't, right? So that's one aspect of it that, again, it removes that task from the account exec, the CSR, who then can focus on new business or cross sell or upsell or building deeper relationships with the policyholders in support of, their producers or principals of the agency. So that's one area, right? The other is when you think about like certificates of issuance, right? You mentioned that one as well. There's different paths that comes down. If somebody's heavy into contracting, contractors may be sending emails, hey, I need 5 certs for these jobs, here's what it is. So we would have a way to consume that information to then look at the policy that's within their agency management system, make sure that it's the most current one, right, and then determine if the terms that the contractor is looking for are actually there, right. So again, it saves a ton of time. Now, there's also a path that comes down that says, I'm going to call and say, hey, Eric, I'm going out to a job in, 5 hours. I need an umbrella cert to walk on. Can you get me that? And here's the information. So then it's a combination of things, because we could also utilize, onshore agents, virtual agents, to be able to take that in, do the same evaluation, and then push out the cert on behalf of the agent or broker, right? So it frees up their time to be able to do that.
Oh, so you also have some human back office pieces to your puzzle, to your service?
You have to, honestly, right? It's human in the loop. And if people say that they're doing stuff 100% from AI, I would say they're blowing smoke and mirrors at you, because you're always going to have some element of human in the loop, if not just to retrain the model that it's going through. But in some cases, they need to do the task because for whatever reason, the model didn't recognize it, right, in the way it was structured. And that has to happen.
Hey everybody, it's Eric. I just want to pop in for a quick announcement. Exciting news. I just launched my new book on Amazon. It's called The Blueprint: An Insurance Agency's Unconventional Rise to the Top. And it goes through a little bit about how I built the agency Insured Solutions since 2009 to today. And the blueprint in terms of how I actually did it with the tech stack, the offshore, nearshore talent, and digital marketing techniques that I use. So pick up a copy today on Amazon. Thanks, guys. And you're saying you offer that back office type support as part of your service, not the CSR at the agency level, correct?
That's right. That's right. But there are elements where, look, some agents may not want to utilize a facility to support them like that. What they want to do is enhance the experience that the CSR, or the account execs having internally, right? So we can bring the toolkit to them, train them on it, and enhance their experience, right? Because then there's value add for that as well for them, because ultimately you're creating capacity, right? And then they can become the ones that are enriching, the system. And by the way, all this is predicated on the fact that, the model needs to be walled for their information, right? It's not shared across hundreds of agencies where, we're commingling policies and things like that. You can't do that, right? When you think about like Chat GPT, which is open source, that, you probably use, I use, on a personal basis, the information you put in there is then used to enrich the model overall across the world. What we've done is we've brought in the right models, and then we create walls between them so that way they get the advantage of the model, but yet their data is still protected because it's their data, and that makes a huge difference.
Right.
And
I
I think
know.
I think that's an area that agents and brokers are wrestling with, like a lot of people, to be honest with you, because if you don't understand that, and you think about, well, all of a sudden I'm going to be putting, personal information, PII data into a model that then is shared across, you can't do that stuff, right? So, bringing it in-house is, and having a model that's dedicated is really, really important.
Got it. And like when you use that example on the COI, can you actually extract the data from an email that came in to the CSR as an example, and then parse that?
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
Okay.
100%. And that's not just done through AI though. That's a combination of things, right? Sometimes depending upon, is it in a PDF? You got to lift it from the PDF. Is it just in the base of the email? You have to read that. So there's sometimes combination of technologies to drive that. But yeah, I mean, AI is, or agentic AI is definitely one of the main drivers
And then on the document management side, is that, you can create proposals, hold data, and certain, doesn't have to all have to be held in the AMS per se.
there. Right. Well, so think about that, right? I mean, in your agency, when you get back a proposal from, whoever, CNA, from Hartford or whoever, right? You get that information, but what you probably do is put that into, you know, an agency proposal that has stuff about your agency and other things, who to contact, with all of the various limits. Maybe there's two or three different, proposals for them to pick from, right? With some variations. One maybe from the Hartford, one maybe from CNA, because there's different terms and conditions and it makes sense. And then you send that off, right? So when we think about, quoting and document, preparedness and things like that, right? We can ingest all of that information through the similar process we were talking about earlier, but then the quotes come back. We can compare the quotes. We can highlight where we think things are better or worse, where there's exclusions that they need to be aware of. We can then package it up and say, here you go. Now you can just send that off to your client. We'd always recommend they go through it once and read it, right? Just to make sure that it's 100%, that they, based on what they're looking for.
Gotcha. So you can customize a proposal based on their
Sure,
agency
whatever the need
format.
is, right? And, yeah, and what you want it to look like and all of that.
And then the other piece of the puzzle would be let's say an agency is a larger agency, they're dealing with claim information for, let's say, workers' comp as an example.
Mhm.
So they're doing all the intake, and then getting or being copied with that and helping the client through any issues. So I know you had some claim features. Is that really for the retail agent, or is that more for a TPA?
So, I mean, I think the answer is yes. It can be for both, right? It all depends on what the agent's actually doing with the information and how they need to use it, right? So, for example, in a comp claim, obviously there's going to be medical data that's going to be brought in. They want to understand that. Maybe maybe there's a, how quick can I get, the employee back to work, things like that, right? So you want to understand really what happened, what's the path, associating with that claim. So then as an agent, you can then develop a plan with, you know, basically the owner of the business to say, hey, how quickly can I get, my guy or my gal back to work as quick as possible? I mean, that's one use case that I could think of, off the top of my head. Clearly we do a lot of that work, with TPAs within our own TPA, and also, with carriers, because then realistically what happens is that with medical bills, sometimes you want to have a medical bill reviewer, right? So if you think about it, you get all these different medical bills together and you have to put them into some organized fashion. You then have to send them off to the medical reviewer, who then does their part of the job, and then they send you back a recommendation. So through automation, we're able to do that, right, seamlessly. So the adjuster doesn't have to spend their time doing that. And then it goes off to the, to the bill reviewer, and then it comes back. And then they can just say yes, no, tweak, and then, you're off to the races.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would think there's more shadow adjusting, if you will, and
Yeah.
coordination in a retail environment versus, let's say, an MGA who has the paper, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And the
Right.
pen.
And some of this stuff, while, we have things available, let's say for a carrier or for an MGA, I mean, look, if an agent broker, approaches us and says, we're thinking about it in this way, and maybe we haven't thought about it that way yet, right? We're willing to have discussions with them to figure out, how we could come up with the right solution for them, and make it meaningful. So we're pretty innovative when it comes to that thing. I mean, it's not a once and done. You know, there's a lot of things still left to develop. When you think about, for example, the whole policy cycle, the renewal cycle, endorsement cycle, cancellation cycles, there's all kinds of things that, continue to evolve. But the one lens that we're putting across everything is technology.
Makes sense. And then what about
So
like,
the agent doesn't have to think about that, right? That's the whole thing. Agents for the most part are there to, sell and service their policyholders, right? They're not thinking about, how should I bring in technology to make me different, to make me, more efficient, more effective. They should rely on a partner to do that, right? And a partner that understands their business from the grassroots up, and a partner that's, investing in that, right? So they can come to them and say, look, yeah, I want to try this. I need to do these 5 things. You can do that and turn them on, and, off to the races.
and then also, let's say, like, just some other basic things that I think retailers run into, like with accounting, and things of that nature. How do you get involved yourself there?
Yeah, so I mean, we have a big, finance and accounting area within our company, so like you need to do commission reconciliation or account current reconciliation, all of that, or, you know, um, we can ingest that, we can automate it, we can handle it. Um, so
So they can have they could either use your automation tools for their in-house folks to do
yes,
it, and or a little combination and use your back office team to do some of
that
the
would
work
be
too.
that would be correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Look, and in a lot of cases, they're leveraging our team to do that because, look, at the end of the day, they're experts at it, right? So if you think about it in the context as, agents that are growing, they're going to grow more and more. They're going to bring on more carriers. They're going to grow those relationships. That's going to become more complex for them, things like that. So rather than continuing to build a team, what they can do is they can get support through a partner like Xceedance that we can then, we can drive that growth for them, you know, where it then doesn't become a distraction. They can focus on what's core to them, which is, that growth trajectory, and make it really work for them.
Yes, yes. Like, because the agent now has to interview, X number of vendors in all these different areas to get
Sure.
to try to piece together the right systems and then try to have it all coordinate,
That's right.
communicate, with their AMS.
That's right. That's right. So our goal is for them not to have to do that. Our goal is also to look at things through the lens of, automation. And the reason why that's so critical is because, look, we compete with other, vendor companies out there that, and I think you probably hear this from, your agent colleagues that you talk with, that in a lot of those relationships, as they grow, it's all about more bodies. Yep, we'll have to add 5 more people offshore. We'll have to add, 6 more people offshore, to be able to pick up this additional volume. For us, what we want to do is, we're creating really a pathway to say, we're going to bring in more and more automation so that you can grow and we can mutually reap the benefit of that without adding people. We don't want to add people, right? We want to automate. So if we can make a task go away through automation, we're going to do that because then you win, we win, believe it or not.
No, it makes total sense. And then I noticed also you can handle the same thing with, let's say, endorsement requests, loss run ordering requests. Like that would come in typically through an email,
That's
or
right.
or the CSR would do it on loss runs just, prior 90 days prior to renewal. So you could just automate that process, and it would automatically email the carrier and or go into their system, grab the loss data, have it all ready for the renewals based on 90 days out.
Absolutely. Or if they need 120 days out, or if they need 60 days out, whatever the timing would be, absolutely, right. And the whole advantage here, if you think about it, it's more than just loss runs. Because if you're ordering loss runs because you need to remarket or renew, right? What we want to do is we want to give you the whole package. So we hand you that whole package, Eric, and say, here you go. Now all you have to do is send it off to the carrier. Let's say it's a large account or heavy middle market account that you're gonna send it to the underwriter via email. If it's in the area of small or mid commercial that's automated, again, we can put that information together and then we can push it out to the various carriers you want to remarket to, come back with those proposals, and then either synthesize them, get them ready so you can propose them to the client, or send them to you and you can complete that part of the process without you ever touching it,
Yeah,
right? So
so
think about the time a CSR or an account exec spends in remarketing accounts. It's huge. And what if I said to you, I could take that off your plate tomorrow and you never had to think about it again? And it costs you pennies on the dollar. Why would you not want to do that, right?
absolutely. And then
So whether you're a small, mid, or large size agent or broker, that changes the way you operate, right?
got it. So yeah, so talk about a little bit of, it sounds exciting. I mean, you're saying all the right things, that's for sure, in terms of trying to what agents are worrying about, so the principles, of trying to do with their agency to grow. So talk a little bit about the pricing and from the budget perspective, and how do you charge, and is there like an implementation fee? How long does it take to get installed? If they use just sort of as much as possible, everything off the shelf. They already have, AMS 360 that you're already dialed in with. Like, pretend like they're a great candidate in terms of they don't want anything additional. They want to use what you have off the shelf. They just wanted to tie into some of their processes and their people. And they already use a lot of the, system that you're already connected
Yeah.
to. How would that work in terms of pricing?
Yeah. So on a pricing basis, we're going to be heavily driven by transaction, right? And again, the transactions are going to be pennies on the dollar. So it's going to depend on, how much you're pushing through and what are the various things that you're doing, right? Is it, is it everything across the entire renewal, endorsement, cancellation spectrum, new business included, or is it, just one thing? So, we have different pricing models that will address this, on an individual basis. And then it's about the volume that's going to come through, right? As far as the setup, some of that gets at, like you're probably very familiar with, depending upon if you're applied or AMS, right? When you set up the system, how you set it up, it can either be off the shelf and you just take it the way applied or AMS gives it to you, right? Or you can customize it for yourself. Now, if you've done a lot of customization, then we have to just align to that. It takes a little bit more time, but we're talking weeks, not months. In some cases, it can be days if it's, truly off the shelf from their perspective on what they've done and how we would plug into that.
Got it. So everything's transaction based, as far as how you bill. Let's say that it's a $10 million agency. can you give a range? I know it would vary, but let's just say they're going to use your, just kind of looking at what we talked about, the COI management, policy checking, a little bit of the document management, and then, um, the loss run, other endorsements, that sort of thing. Like,
Yes, sit back in your chair and crack a beer because we charge 10 million for that. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, I mean, look, a lot of it's going to come down to, what's the throughput volume, to be honest with you. But when I say it's pennies on the dollar, I mean that. And I'm not talking 99 cents to a dollar. I'm talking pennies on the dollar, right? Really, that's the way to think about it. The more automation we bring to the table, the lower the cost is. Remember, there's always going to be an element of human in the loop, but the human's not going to be dedicated necessarily, and nor should they be, because you want that resource to be able to help many, because then it keeps your costs down, with respects to that, right? But in the example I think you were giving was, if we came to an agency and said, look, we're gonna take our model, we're gonna plug it into your agency, and you're gonna leverage your people, then you're just paying for the model, which again goes back to the throughput of it, but it's well worth it, believe me. The savings is, on the low side, I would say it's somewhere in the 30 to 35% range. And on the high side, it goes, keeps going.
35% of,
Your cost would be able to cut off,
oh, I
right?
got
So,
it.
or you can look at it a different way and say, now I have 35% more capacity to grow without having to add anybody. And then as things evolve and you get more efficient, right? Because like with anything, if you think about when Excel first came out, right? Some people, it took a little bit of time for them to understand how to write different, formulas and do different things, you know. So as people get more and more accustomed to the tool, they're going to be more efficient, even though it's automated. And as that efficiency happens, right, that gives them more capacity. That capacity means I can grow without having to add, right? So that's the whole value here. It's about being able to create capacity so that they can grow, continue to grow without having to add more, more resource, right? They should have more producers because then they're bringing in more, more opportunities, but not more support staff.
Right, right. So, yeah, I mean, we did a lot of offshore. You're right. You just got to keep adding heads as you grow, and even though that's a
Yeah,
low
but what I'm
cost,
saying is don't even do that, right? Again, some of the vendors that are out there today, they even talk about the fact that, oh yeah, well, we're automating things through AI. You see a lot of it out on LinkedIn and things like that. There's still a lot of smoke and mirrors that are out there, right? What you need is real and what you need is now, right? Because if somebody comes to you and says, well, and you say, Eric, I'm going to grow my agency by, $5 million this year in commission, right? They're going to say to you, okay, well, I need to add 35 people in order to support that growth. What I'm saying is we flip the pendulum upside down and I say, okay, I want you to grow by 5 million in commission income. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that the automation can support that growth where you don't need to add 35 people. You just go. And then we reap the benefit in it mutually.
got it. So you'll handle any specialized programming for the future as long as you sort of got the baseline going with the agency. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. We want to keep things running. And in fact, we want to further enhance them as we mutually continue to grow together. Right. Because look, the more efficient the process becomes, you benefit from that because it gives you more capacity. We're sharing that benefit. We benefit, right? Because, I mean, obviously there's a throughput that's happening, but as we get more efficient, our margins get better. And we're sharing in that mutually. It's a win-win. There's no other way to look at it.
Right, right. You're
I
both
don't think.
incented on growing, because
That's
you're
right.
you're you're off the submission volume, if you will, and so
That's right.
on.
I mean,
Yeah.
the other thing, and you may have heard this through some of your other, colleagues as well, is, some vendors will come to you and say they have a minimum. Look, I need, it's got to be 10 bodies, or, I need this much. We don't have that threshold. in the agent broker segment of our business, right?
P&C agents, have you run into Byberg, which is a Berkshire Hathaway company quoting workers' comp for either your prospects or clients? Well, great news. Insured Solutions, a national MGA, has an appointment that is set up to allow you to quote, bind, and service Byberg at your agency. And the coverage is in all states. It's A-rated. Startups are even accepted. There's $125,000 maximum premium. And some of the tough industries they write are construction, transportation, that includes towing and parcel delivery, manufacturing, security guards that are armed and unarmed, motor mediation, and many more. So go to our website at insuredsolutions.net, click the Get Appointed link. We'll get you logins for you and your team, and can set up a webinar for training if you'd like. Also, feel free to email info@insuredsolutions.net, and I can handle the submission myself, or call 770-402-5343. Be glad to speak to you and give you more detail. Thanks. Oh, that's great.
So we want to help everybody be successful.
It sounds exciting. And I like how everything's all included in one sort of environment. So you don't have to, again, partner with all these different folks. And then
That's critical when you think about it, right? Because one of the hardest things, think about it, you have 4 or 5 different vendors that show up on your door. Each are doing a different task, right? And they all have different automation. And now all of a sudden you have to figure out how you glue all that together for the benefit of your agency. So we're taking that off the table, because that's not the right approach. We believe the right approach is we've created a foundation that, again, we can plug and play different modules. The reason why that's also a benefit is because 5 years from now, I can't tell you how much more advanced the technology is going to be. What I can tell you is that the foundation we've built will be able to consume that too. So if there's a better way to handle certificate of insurance in 5 years, then we can unplug and plug in the new, right? And then our agent partners get the benefit of that, right? Instant, which is the only way to be looking at this.
And would you say, are you set to work with a startup operation that wants to become, let's say, a digital agency, and right off the bat, they don't have any infrastructure yet because they're just starting, or they're just putting it together? They're getting their AMS, they got their producers. It's the agency principal and a producer or two and a CSR, right? Are you set for that sort of startup, or do you prefer working with, someone, the more of the 20, 30, 40 employee agencies?
No, so we actually will do both. If I think about, I'm going to pivot for a minute to the MGA space, right?
Right.
So, and the reason I'm doing that is because, remember, we acquired this company back a little bit less than a year ago. So we're still, I wouldn't say that for a pure startup. Look, if one of them wants to go down the path with us and partner, we'll do that. I'm not 100% sure that every single task would be automated from day one if they want a true, fully digital experience, right? Just being completely honest, and that's the best way to be. But when I think about where we are in the MGA evolution, right, we've created what we call our MGA Agility Suite. So think about somebody that has a program, bunch of underwriters, and they say, yep, we know how to underwrite, professional liability better than anybody in whatever the segment is, engineering, architects, whatever.
Right.
And what we don't know is how to set up an MGA. We have relationships, so we know we can get, capacity, but we need everything else. So we've created, similar to what we're doing right now in fully building out the agent stack, is our MGA Agility Suite. So that means, okay, they need an entity to operate in. We have a licensed entity for both standard and surplus lines across all 50 states. It's called a rent-a-shell. So they can operate their business tomorrow in any state based on utilizing our licensed shell, right? They would hire the underwriters. We would manage that for them. We would create all the workflows. We would bring in the technology, and we could drive everything, including, issuance of policy, creation of the border roll, plugging that back into the reinsurer, the capacity provider, right? Full turnkey. And then take it a step further where we would do claims, right? So we could also handle the claims as a TPA for it, barring the capacity provider or the reinsurer approved us, which in many cases we're already approved because we're doing quite a bit of work with all of them, right? So when I think about the agent space, what our ultimate goal is to do exactly what it is you're looking for. You get a bunch of people together, guys and gals, and say, we're going to create our own. We've got access to the markets. We got 3 or 4 markets, but we want to create something different, right? We want it to be totally digital, and that's where we want to play, not only for new but also for existing, and how we can help them to, transition to an ultimate operation that allows that principal to put more in their pocket, to pay their producers more, to pay their CSR and their account execs more, while enriching their whole experience, leveraging, a digital footprint.
Well, sounds good. Sounds good. So it sounds like it could be possible, especially on the MGA side, or to do
And it'll
that.
be possible on the agency side too. We just haven't, I mean, full transparency, we just haven't done it yet, right? I haven't had someone come to us and say, hey, we're starting up an agency, let's do this. We could definitely apply our methodology to that, and I'm sure it will work. It may need some small tweaks, but that's something that jointly we would figure out and make it beneficial to them, as we go down that path.
Got it. No, it makes sense. So if Travis, if people have questions for you or maybe want to get a demo, like what's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, I mean, look, they can reach me by email at travis.macmillian@xceedance.com. They can go to our website. They can fill out a, I'm interested form. It's a couple of clicks, and we'll get back to them right away. Look, we'd love to have the conversations. We're here to help, and we really want to, fuel the agent broker market so that, they can evolve, as the industry continues to evolve.
No, it sounds really exciting, and that I like that you got the infrastructure behind you, that Marble Box acquisition, and so on. I know that really helped. Oh, and just for those that are driving, Xceedance is Xceedance, Xceedance.com, and on the web. So, like Travis said, fill that form, or Travis.MacMillian, MacMillian @Xceedance.com for questions direct, or shoot me a note and I'll get it over to Travis either way. But Travis, I appreciate your time. I'm glad we had you on, and I hope to meet you in person down in Miami Beach soon.
Definitely. Let me know when you're coming down. I'd be happy to take you out for a bite to eat. And Eric, really appreciate your time, and thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks again.
All right, take care.
Thanks again for tuning in to Insurance Shop Talk. If you enjoyed our deep dive into the latest trends, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Until next time, I'm Eric Stein, and this has been Insurance Shop Talk.